this one, and want to start out by just talking about, this one's called Relationships Defined, and as we did research, over 90% of singles get married. It's went down in the past few years. Millennials are about 70% now, but I would say even though that other 20% are in a relationship that would mimic a marriage, emotionally, physically, and so even though marriage has went down in recent years, relationships have not changed as much. Now, relationships as they get older tend to stay single longer. Those type of things are happening. But, so we're going to talk about the difference between modern dating and maybe some biblical principles of dating. And we're going to go through here. I'm going to talk modern dating. Ruth's going to talk biblical dating and just kind of go in staccato fashion. So we're going to read the definitions and then look at the differences between the two. And we're going to stick close to our notes because we only have so many minutes and Tyler's going to cut the mics. So here we go. Modern dating. We may basically define modern dating as a method of introduction and carrying out of a premarital relationship between a single man and a single woman. First, that begins with either the man or the woman initiating with the other. That is conducted outside the formal oversight or authority of either the person's family, church, friends. That may or may not have marriage as its end goal and may purely be recreational or educational. So that's kind of the framework we're looking at for modern dating.
Biblical dating, we're going to define as the method of introduction and carrying out of a premarital relationship between a single man and a single woman. And that begins with maybe the man approaching someone that the woman is under authority of, like the woman's father, family, church, and that always has marriage, or at least the determination regarding marriage to a specific person as its direct goal.
So what are the differences between modern dating and biblical dating? Now, real quick, some of these things you may go, that's archaic. We don't do that anymore. And it's true. There are some of these things that you would say are antiquated. But there's some of them that are really good things back in the day. And so we're going to bring some of those up. So what's the real difference? And here are some of the fundamentals of the real difference. Modern dating philosophy assumes that there will be several intimate romantic relationships in a person's life before marriage. In fact, it advocates playing the field in order to determine what you want in a mate.
Biblical dating has as its goal to be emotionally and physically intimate with only one member of the opposite sex, your spouse.
And when we talk about dating, that doesn't mean you couldn't go out with a number of people. What we're talking about is more exclusive, single, one-on-one dating, where we're not dating anyone else, we're not going out with anyone else for coffee. This is us. And so, put that in that framework. Modern dating tends to be egalitarian. What I mean by that, no difference between men and women in spiritual or emotional wiring of God-given roles. And so, she had mentioned that men approaching a woman. And if you don't know what egalitarian is, it's just flatline equality between the sexes. Now, we believe in equality, but in different roles within a dating relationship.
So biblical dating tends to be complementarian. So God has created men and women differently and has ordained that each of these spiritual equals to play different and valuable roles in the church and in the family. So we're equal, and yet we have different responsibilities and roles that we play. It doesn't make one more important than the other.
And one of the, as we were talking through this as a group, if a woman is going after a guy, she's sort of leading that relationship at that point. And we talked to some single women. It's like, I like when a guy is pursuing me and coming after me and leading that relationship in a way, because I feel he would lead me in the future as well in that relationship. Modern dating tends to assume that we will spend a great deal of time together, and most of it alone.
Biblical dating tends to encourage time spent in group activities or with other people that the couple knows well. So, you can go hang out as friends together and get to know them. Or with your family and invite that person to come in and join you.
And as piggybacking on what Heather said, spending time with married couples, it's good for dating couples to spend time with married couples to see how they live, to see what happens in a relationship. So as you're single, but also as you're dating, it's good to see that take place. Modern dating tends to assume that you need to get to know the person more deeply than anyone else in the world to figure out whether you should be with him or her.
Biblical dating approach is suggesting that a real commitment to the other person should precede a high level of intimacy. So, commitment before intimacy kind of thing.
Yeah, and as we were talking through this, a lot of singles kind of that blind date type thing. They don't know someone, they go out. That's kind of a first interaction. When you look at dating, it's always great to actually know that person in friendship before that exclusive dating takes place. Because what happens in dating? Dating, we all tend to put our best foot forward, right? If there's that commitment, I'm going to do everything I can to woo her to me, and vice versa. Where if you're in a friendship with other people and just observing them, you get to see character. You get to see what that person's really like, and you don't have an agenda with them. And so, just dating someone that you actually know versus just a blind date, getting to know somebody, you may not get to know the true them because they're always putting their best foot forward. Okay, modern dating tends to assume that a good relationship will meet all my needs and desires and a bad one won't. It is essentially a self-centered approach.
Biblical dating approaches relationships from a completely different perspective. One of ministry and service and bringing glory to God. So it's not a self-serving, but it's other-serving approach.
And don't let that word ministry fool you. Sometimes, I know ladies will date dudes that need to be fixed, and probably dudes vice versa. It's like, I can help them. It's like a puppy, you know. I think I can help that guy. So that's what we're talking about ministry. We're talking about someone you can serve with, someone that you can do life with outside of just this. But we have a couple in our body. They were doing ministry together. And one day, he looks at her and wow, she's attractive. He said, I never really thought of her that way, but we're serving God together. We're enjoying each other. We're doing life together. And it was just like something magical happened in his eyes. And for her, also, they've been married, but they were doing ministry together. They were serving together outside of even thinking about each other. And so it was cool to see how their marriage is blossoming. It's it's a couple years, but it's just been really cool to see how it was on a foundation that was set very, very early. Okay, modern dating assumes that what I do and who I date as an adult is entirely up to me and is private. My family or church has no formal or practical authority.
Biblical dating assumes a context of spiritual accountability, as is true in every other area of Christian life.
So basically, did I miss one? What did I miss? Modern dating tends to assume that there will be a high level of emotional involvement in dating relationship and some level of physical involvement as well, and that is true.
So biblical dating assumes no physical intimacy and more limited emotional intimacy outside of marriage. Because I think sometimes we tend to get emotionally intimate with someone before we've made that commitment before God.
Yeah, and honestly, if you're dating several years, you're emotionally married. Let's just be honest. You're probably doing we's and us, and your life is revolving around that other person. You're just maybe not living in the same house, or maybe you are. You're not, but you're acting married emotionally. And I've met, talk to Christian singles who, they say they're not intimate physically, and that's good. But emotionally, they are so intertwined that for them to break up, it would be like a married couple going through a divorce. And it's just not healthy. So basically, we can make three general statements about modern dating versus biblical dating in terms of their respective philosophies. And one, modern dating seems to be about finding that right person for me.
Biblical dating, on the other hand, is more about being the right person to serve my future spouse's needs and to be a God-glorifying husband or wife.
Modern dating, intimacy precedes commitment.
In biblical dating, commitment precedes intimacy.
That's good.
The modern dating approach tells us that the way to figure out whether I want to marry someone is to act like we're married. If we like it, we make it official. If we don't, then we go through something emotionally and probably physically like a divorce.
However, in biblical dating, Scripture guides us as to how to find a mate and marry, and the Bible teaches, among other things, that we should act in such a way so as not to imply a marriage-level commitment until that commitment exists before the Lord.
Yeah, so there's modern dating and what we believe is biblical dating is quite a bit different. Where the focus lies, what we're doing it for, and we can be better together glorifying God than separate. And can you say that about the person that you are looking at? Couple caveats that we wanted to put in here that we thought we didn't know what kind of audience we'd have. But the person that you date must be a disciple of Christ if you are a disciple of Christ.
Amen.
2 Corinthians 6:14 says, "Do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. For what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness? Or what fellowship has light with darkness? What accord has Christ with Baal? Or what portion does a believer share with an unbeliever? What agreement has a temple of God with idols? For we are the temple of the living God." Now I tell couples there's a couple different ways you can go in relationships. We could be disciples of Christ, and we're going to lead each other towards Christ. We could be a disciple and maybe not a disciple of Christ. One of us could lead the other person to Christ, but typically what happens is the other person leads away from Christ because they don't have that commitment. They don't have that desire. But what can also happen is both can just completely fall away. And if you have a worldview of Jesus is your king, you're going to serve him with everything. It is missionary dating, and that means I'm going to try to convert her so that we believe the same thing with what we do with our lives, what we do with our children, what we do with everything is probably not going to work. That is not the way God designed it. Matthew 22:37 through 39 says, "And he said to him, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is a great and first commandment. And the second is like unto it, you should love your neighbor as yourself." And when you have divided loyalties, it doesn't work because that divided loyalty typically can take you away from God. And I know this can be a hot topic when we're talking about dating, but the Bible has set up from the beginning that to date should be of the opposite sex. And we put that in the first part. But from the beginning, this is the way God set it up. Genesis 2:23-24 says, "Then the man said, 'This at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of man. Therefore a man should leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh.'" And I don't want to be crass, but if you just look at how body parts are made up, I mean, women and men have body parts that will complement one another, where men and men kind of don't, women kind of don't. So, Matthew 19:4-6, and he answered, "Have you not read that he who created them from the beginning made them male and female, and said, therefore a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let no man separate." And so we want to walk in that, in light of Scripture. And I know society today has different and varying degrees on dating and marriage and singleness. So how much time do we have left there, Tyler?
7 minutes.
7 minutes, okay. We wanted to hit just one or two questions of, for our Christian folk. My boyfriend or girlfriend, how godly do they have to be? Is it just enough to be Christian? Or are we looking for someone that we're going to marry to be at a certain maturity level, to be at a certain level in their faith before I can date them? And Ruth can chime in, but wanted to just talk about that. There's been a lot of young believers that I see a fire and a vigor to know who God is, to desire to please God with all their being, and able to lead the other person that may have been in the faith much longer. But where's the trajectory of that person's heart? I don't know that it's a maturity level to, well, they know more Scripture than I do. Well, they know this than I do. They know this. But say a woman is dating a man or looking to date a man who has maybe been in the faith 2 years and she's been a Christian for 20. Is it wrong for her to date him? And I would say no. If the trajectory of his heart is to lead her well in the things of God. He may not have all the answers, and that's fine. But where is the trajectory of that person's heart? Or the lady's heart that may be a guy who's been saved for 20 years and she's only just new to the faith. Where's her heart to learn and to grow?
I really think that a huge thing is their heart condition, and that's why it's important, I think, sometimes to get to know someone as a friend before the dating relationship begins, because then you get to observe their character without them really seeing, you get to see them for who they really are, how they interact with their family, with their friends, with their church family. Are they serving? Are they sacrificially doing something for someone else? Or are they just kind of thinking about themselves and things? You can know a lot about a person by just watching them and their character.
The other thing we would add is don't date yourself. Kind of awkward, right? But so many people want to date themselves. They want that other person to like everything they like. They want that person to, if they like sports, they want that other person to like sports. They want to date themselves because then they can be selfish. Right? I don't have to give anything if that person likes everything I like. And I know that's never across the board, but a lot of people want to date themselves. And selfishness will be brought up. The other thing we did want to hit was, should I date a godly girl or guy that I do not find attractive? This is where the rubber meets the road, right? It's like, should I date a godly girl or guy that I do not feel attracted to? And I would encourage you not to let that other person know that if you do get married. But I also would encourage you probably not to go after them in a dating relationship if you do not find them attractive. What I would say is, go into a friendship relationship. Because I'm telling you, godliness is sexy to godly people.
Amen.
Godliness is sexy to godly people. And so, you may not at first glance find them physically attractive, but as your relationship of friendship grows, you might find them attractive. Now, again, you might not. But let a friendship blossom with other godly singles. You have no idea what God could do with that. Okay, that's all we've got right now. We're going to have a Q&A time after. We're going to break up into another session with Tyler. He's going to take the menses upstairs. And I think Ruth and Susan and Heather are going to be down here and talk to the ladies. So get some coffee and the bathroom. Mark.
I was going to add, I think from my perspective, an uncomfortable truth I've had to come to terms with is that in the confines of scriptural marriage, the only time you see someone getting a spouse was either my parents picked it for me, or I saw this person I desired to marry. I didn't date him, I just got engaged.
Yep.
It was super uncomfortable for our context, but just like, hey, guess what? I think we're going to get married, so let's get engaged. That's terrifying to us now, but that's that commitment prior to intimacy I think you were touching.
Yeah. And back in the ancient days, things were so different. Arranged marriages. And now, the family structure is almost to the point where we couldn't do that in our society today. But yeah. Okay.
I would want to.
Actually, I've got one more thing to say, and that is when you go to date someone, like the young men would go to a young woman's family or church family, when you're going to them for counsel and asking permission to date her, if for some reason God is showing you she is not the girl for you, be bold and courageous and go to her family or her church and say, you know what, she's not the one for me and I need to end this relationship. Don't go to other people that don't know what's going on and you haven't gone to them for advice throughout the whole thing. It's just a wise little word of wisdom there. So.
Great session. Thank you.